Well, Bitcoin has been controversial. It's become the preferred currency of shady international speculators, even criminals. It's the bane of governments, central banks who fear the challenge to their control over financial systems. But the technology which underpins this is now making inroads into the mainstream, including here in New Zealand. Yesterday, IBM announced a new low-cost international payment system, which will be available in New Zealand using blockchain, the way of securely conducting and recording electronic transactions without a database. Alex Sims of Auckland University's Department of Commercial Law says the IBM announcement is validation of the technology. Alex joins us now. Good morning.
Morning, Graham.
What is your observation of the way that this is going to be deployed in New Zealand?
Well, it looks like what's happening, because the press release was a bit short on details, is it's being used by the banks to speed up their internal processes. Because when you make a payment using ClickX, which is the New Zealand partner in this, it looks as though it's going instantaneously to someone else overseas. But in truth, it takes days for the whole process to work out. So what they're trying to do is actually make the process work in real time. So, which is quite extraordinary.
Why? Why is it extraordinary? What's different about it?
Well, as I said, at the moment, it takes days for this to happen. And it's a bit like, I was thinking about this morning, how to explain it. It's a bit like, say, when I was young with photography. So you took your photograph, and then you'd have to wait days for it to be processed. Or it'd speed it up, so maybe an hour. And then you had Polaroid, which was sort of instantaneous, but it was all expensive, you weren't just clicking away. And then when it went digital, photography went digital, everything changed. And that is what's happening with blockchain. So another way of thinking about it is our current systems, especially our currency, is a bit like the Flintstones, and blockchain and cryptocurrency is like Star Trek.
Are we going to be able to explain blockchain on the radio, how it actually works? Are you going to give that a crack?
Yes, okay. So what it is a database which, if you have a public one, for example, Bitcoin, anyone can see into it. And so normally with your databases, you try to keep them secret so no one can see into it. The other thing is that you can't make any changes to it unless more than half of the network agrees. So with a normal database, you can go in and someone can make changes. And this is why banks have been hacked, because someone gets into the system and gets the money out. And that cannot happen with blockchain. So it's a way of everyone can see what's going on. Or if you want, you can actually hide the information. So, for example, with supply chains and things like that you don't necessarily want people to know how much you've purchased goods for and on-sold them for. But no one needs to see that if they don't want. Now, with IBM, it's what we call a permissioned or a closed one. So that system that IBM has announced, only the participants in the system can actually see the information.
Why is it? How is it tamper-proof, though?
Because that's the thing. If you want to make any changes to it, you've got to get more than 50% of the people to agree. But the other thing is that you can never go back and make changes. So later on, it's like having ledgers in a book. If you want to make changes, later on in another ledger, a change is made. You don't go back and make a change to the original transaction.
How is this technology going to affect the way that we buy, sell, exchange money in the future, do you think?
You won't need to go to a bank. You won't need a bank account. You don't need a bank account now. I can send money to you without going through a bank. I can send money to the other side of the world in seconds. At the moment, it takes days to do that.
You can do that. You can send me some money if you like.
The other thing. Sorry, this is already here. So, for example, I do know Morning Report a month or so ago. Someone was saying, you can't use cryptocurrencies to buy milk at the dairy. You can. There's debit cards. So which one? Visa or MasterCard debit cards. People are using them at the moment. They go in, they use them just as you would any Visa or MasterCard. The merchant gets the money. You can go into an ATM and withdraw New Zealand dollars.
Can you? Now, you can do that now?
Yes. So it's called 10x, and Monero. If you just Google cryptocurrency debit cards, it will come up. They're a little bit hard to get hold of.
Yeah. Okay. So look, this is really interesting. But why would I do it? What's the upside for me to do that?
If you want to send money overseas, but also just on the nitrates in the bottles, what you can also use is the supply chain. So every single bottle of bottled water can have its spectrometry, its own thing, its own barcode, and so a consumer can come along and get a reading of where that water came from, when it was bottled, what is in it. Because at the moment, if you look at the things at the back, you can't. It's just generic.
Right. So you could have sort of hyper disclosure along a supply chain from this technology.
Yes, and also the other thing is when you, and this has already happened in Australia, sending say cotton overseas, when it lands, then you've got to go through all the paperwork for the money to be paid. What they're doing, this has already happened, is it's put on a blockchain. You've got on the container a little Internet of Things device. When it reached China, reached the port, automatically there was a trigger for the payment to be paid. But even better is that the payment you can say where it goes. For example, you can make the payment straight to the taxation authority, some to your employees, everything like that. So it's a game changer. Yeah.
So do you think that banks are ultimately a sunset industry?
They could be if they don't embrace it. What they're trying to do, they're all working on it. Some are more terrified, other ones say, oh no, it's not going to disrupt it. But all I can say is think about Kodak. I had to explain to my 12-year-old son the other day about Kodak because Kodak was one of the biggest companies in the world and it's gone.
Yes.
So it's just embracing it. The telcos have had to embrace it with Skype that's come along and destroyed their international call business. So, I mean, they are working on it, but to try to stop it is, I think, futile, but it's just to get the best benefits. And also the other thing is, for the average person, cryptocurrencies are not the easiest because if you lose your private key, you can't go and ask someone to give it back. You've lost everything. And so banks can play an important role in being custodians. So they will play a role for the foreseeable future.
Fascinating stuff, and the implications are huge. Thanks, Alex. Alex Sims there from Auckland University's Department of Commercial Law.